The slap happened at 7:43 in the evening. I know the exact time because I had just looked at my watch to check whether the cake would be arriving soon, and the numbers were still in my head, 7:43, when Gerald's hand connected with the side of my face and the room went completely silent. Not dramatically silent. Not the cinematic silence of movies where everything stops at once and faces turn in slow motion. Just the ordinary silence of a dinner party at which something has happened that nobody knows how to respond to yet. There were 11 people at my mother's birthday table, 11 people who all saw it, including my mother. Dorothy May was sitting at the head of her own table in her deep burgundy sweater, a glass of wine she had been nursing since the beginning of the meal resting in her hand. She had seen everything, and when the silence settled after the sound of Gerald's hand on my face, my mother did something that I have thought about every day since. She picked up her wine glass. She took a small, unhurried sip. She set it back down, and she smiled. Not at Gerald, not at me, not at the room. Just smiled, the way she smiled when she knew something nobody else in the room knew yet. And in that smile, I understood something I should have understood years earlier. My mother had been waiting for this. Not for Gerald to hit me, for Gerald to reveal himself. And now he had, and whatever came next was already in motion. Before I tell you what my mother did, I need to ask you something. If someone hurt the person you loved most, right in front of you, at your own birthday dinner, in your own home, what would you do? Would you call the police immediately? Throw him out yourself? Break down completely? Or would you pick up your wine glass, take a sip, set it back down, and smile, because you had been preparing for exactly this moment for longer than anyone in that room knew? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and if this story is already sitting in your chest the way it sat in mine, if you have ever been in a room where someone you love was hurt and the person who hurt them believed they were untouchable, please like this video and subscribe to Still Waters. New stories arrive here regularly, and every one of them runs deeper than you expect. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Linda May Washington. I am 42 years old, and I am my mother's daughter in every way that matters. The way she holds herself, the way she thinks before she speaks, the particular quality of stillness she brings to difficult situations that most people mistake for passivity, but that is actually something else entirely. I grew up watching my mother be still, not passive. Still. There is a difference that took me years to understand. The difference between a person who does nothing because they have nothing and a person who does nothing because they are waiting for the right moment to do everything. My mother Dorothy had been waiting for the right moment my entire life, on any number of things, and she had never once missed it. I should have trusted that about her. But I was 42 years old, and I had been married to Gerald Watkins for 11 years, and somewhere in those 11 years I had made the particular mistake that people in difficult situations make. I had begun to believe that what was happening to me was not happening to me, that it was manageable, that it was private, that it was something I could handle without involving the people who loved me. Gerald was charming when I met him. That is always where these stories start, and I know how that sounds. But his charm was not obvious in the way that warnings are supposed to be obvious. It was specific, targeted, the kind of charm that makes you feel in its presence like you are the most interesting person in any room. We met at a conference in Atlanta. He was a pharmaceutical sales director. I was presenting a curriculum development program for at-risk students. He found my table, introduced himself, asked intelligent questions about my work. We were married in June of 2013 in a ceremony in Savannah that my mother hosted in her home, in the garden, with flowers she had grown herself and food she had cooked with help from friends, and the particular care of a woman who understood that the details of a celebration were themselves a form of love. Gerald was charming at our wedding. He was charming for approximately 2 years after it, and then he began to change in the particular gradual way that requires you, looking back, to identify the moment it began, which is impossible because these things don't have a moment. They have a direction. A slow tilt that you only recognize as a tilt when you have been tilting long enough to notice the floor is no longer level. The first time Gerald raised his voice at me, we were in our kitchen on a Tuesday evening, and I had forgotten to pick up something from the grocery store. He raised his voice, and I apologized, and he calmed down and told me he was sorry, that work had been stressful, that it wouldn't happen again. It happened again, not the next week, 3 months later, then 2 months after that, then once a month, then more frequently in the particular escalation pattern that I did not recognize as a pattern because I was inside it, and patterns are invisible from the inside. He never hit me. For 9 years, he never hit me. He raised his voice. He said things that left marks of a different kind. He monitored my phone, my time, my friendships, with the practiced casualness of someone who had learned to do these things in ways that could always be explained as something else. Concern, interest, the reasonable desire to know where his wife was. I had not told my mother. I want you to understand why, because the why matters as much as the what. My mother had instincts about people that were, in my experience, almost never wrong. She had instincts about Gerald specifically. I had seen them in the first year of our marriage, in the particular way she watched him at family gatherings, in the questions she asked that seemed casual and were not. And I had convinced myself that her instincts were wrong, that she was simply protective in the way mothers are protective, that Gerald was fine, that we were fine. So I said nothing. For 9 years I said nothing, and for 9 years my mother watched. I need to tell you what my mother had been doing for 9 years. Not obsessively, not in a way I was aware of, but with the particular quiet attention of a woman who loves her daughter and has instincts she has learned to trust and who has understood, without being told, that something in her daughter's life is not right. She had been paying attention. Small things. The way Gerald spoke to me at family gatherings, not in front of everyone, but in the particular moments when he thought no one was listening. The way he handled my responses to questions, sometimes answering for me before I could answer for myself. The way I had begun over the years to make myself slightly smaller in his presence without seeming to notice I was doing it. Dorothy noticed. She also noticed other things. Gerald worked for Meridian Pharmaceuticals, a regional company that operated across 4 southeastern states. He had been their top-performing regional director for 14 years, a fact he mentioned with enough frequency that it had become part of the ambient sound of our marriage. What Dorothy had discovered, through a combination of sources I will describe in a moment, was that Gerald's performance at Meridian was not entirely what it appeared. 3 years before the birthday dinner, my mother had coffee with a woman named Cecile Morrison. Cecile was the former assistant to Meridian's regional compliance officer, and had left the company after raising questions about certain reporting irregularities she had observed in Gerald's territory. My mother had not gone looking for Cecile Morrison. Cecile was the cousin of a woman in my mother's book club, and she had come up in conversation in the particular way that people come up in conversation in small, connected communities when someone is paying attention to the connections. My mother was always paying attention to the connections. She had listened to Cecile's story carefully. She had asked careful questions, and then she had gone home and sat at her kitchen table and begun, very quietly, to learn everything there was to publicly know about Gerald Watkins and Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Not illegally, not aggressively, simply, carefully. The way a woman who trusts her instincts and has access to public records and a retired attorney friend named Marcus begins to assemble a picture from the pieces that are already there if you know where to look. Over the following 3 years, she assembled quite a picture. Expense reports that didn't align with documented client meetings. Performance bonuses tied to numbers that, when examined against regional market data, were difficult to explain through legitimate means. 2 former Meridian employees who had filed internal complaints, never formally resolved, about practices in Gerald's territory that they described as irregular. None of it was a smoking gun. All of it was a pattern. And my mother had placed everything, The documents, the records, the notes from her conversations with Cecile and others, the timeline she had constructed over 3 years of quiet attention, into a folder in the filing cabinet in her home office. She had never showed it to me. She had never told me it existed. She was waiting for the right moment. The right moment arrived at 7:43 on the evening of her 67th birthday. Gerald did not intend to slap me at my mother's birthday dinner. I want to say that because I think it's important, not to excuse him, but to explain how it happened, because understanding how it happened is how you understand everything that followed. He had been drinking since before we arrived. Not dramatically. Gerald was never dramatic with alcohol in public, but enough. Enough that the particular, carefully managed quality that characterized him in social situations was slightly loosened, the way a well-knotted tie loosens after a long day. The dinner had been going well on the surface. My mother had cooked a real dinner, the kind that took 2 days to prepare. 11 of us at the table, my mother at the head, me to her left, Gerald to my left. At some point, I don't remember exactly what preceded it, Gerald made a dismissive comment about something I had said. The kind he made regularly in private and occasionally in public, framed as a joke that was not a joke. I responded. That was the thing I did differently. Something in me, in the safety of my mother's table, had allowed me to say what I actually thought rather than what would keep the peace. Gerald did not like that. He leaned toward me. He said something low enough that only I could hear it. And then, perhaps because I did not respond the way I responded in private, perhaps because there were 11 people watching and his wife had just talked back to him in front of them, his hand came up, and the room went silent. Gerald stood up immediately. It was an accident, he said. His voice was steadier than it had any right to be. She moved into... My mother's voice cut through the room, quietly. Gerald, just his name. He stopped. My mother was still sitting at the head of her table. She had not stood up. She had not raised her voice. She was holding her wine glass and looking at Gerald with an expression I had seen her use exactly twice in my life, both times in situations where someone had significantly misjudged who they were dealing with. "Sit down," she said. 11 people held their breath, and Gerald Watkins, who was 6'1" and had 14 years of top sales performance and the particular confidence of a man who had never been told no in a way that mattered, sat down. "We are going to finish dinner," my mother said. Her voice was conversational, pleasant almost, because it is my birthday and the food is good and these people came here to celebrate. "And then, Gerald, when dinner is finished, you and I are going to have a conversation." She picked up her fork. And dinner resumed. The next 2 hours were completely normal on the surface. My mother made it so. She asked her sister about her garden. She told a story about something that had happened at the library. She accepted the birthday cake when it arrived with the smile she always had for things people had made for her. She blew out her candles. She thanked everyone for coming. She was the hostess she had always been. And Gerald sat at that table for 2 hours, unable to leave, because my mother had told him to stay. And he stayed, because there was something in my mother's certainty that made the alternative feel genuinely impossible. I have thought about this often. What my mother had that made Gerald Watkins sit at a table for 2 hours when every instinct he possessed was telling him to leave. I think it was simply this. She knew something he didn't know she knew, and he could feel it. The guests left at 9:30. My Aunt Ruth was the last to go. She embraced me at the door, said nothing, held on a moment longer than a regular hug, and walked to her car. Gerald and I were in my mother's living room. My mother came in from the kitchen. She sat down across from Gerald. She was carrying a folder. Gerald looked at the folder. "Gerald," my mother said, "I'm going to say some things and I'd like you to listen before you respond." Gerald said nothing. My mother opened the folder. "I have been paying attention to you for 3 years," she said. Not obsessively, not with any agenda beyond understanding what was happening in my daughter's life that she was not able to tell me about. She placed the first document on the table. This is a timeline of certain irregularities in Meridian Pharmaceuticals' regional reporting for your territory over the past 4 years. Gerald's expression changed. She placed the second document. These are notes from a conversation I had with Cecile Morrison, formerly of Meridian's compliance office. She placed the third. These are publicly available records of 2 internal complaints filed by former employees in your territory. She closed the folder. She looked at Gerald. Now, she said, you are going to do 2 things. The first is that you are going to leave this house tonight and find somewhere else to stay while Linda determines what she wants to do next. The second is that you are going to understand that what I have in this folder is the beginning of a conversation with Meridian's compliance department that I have not yet had, but that I am entirely prepared to have if you make any of what comes next more difficult than it needs to be. Gerald stared at her. You can't, he said. I have an appointment, my mother said pleasantly, with a compliance attorney named Marcus Webb on Monday morning. She paused. I have not yet decided whether to keep it. The room was very quiet. Gerald looked at me. I looked at my mother. Gerald looked back at my mother. And something happened in Gerald Watkins that I had never seen happen in 11 years of marriage. He deflated, not dramatically. He didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't make any of the scenes I had spent 11 years carefully managing to prevent. He simply reduced. The size of him in the room became smaller. The certainty went out of his posture. The particular quality that had always made him feel large in any space he occupied left quietly and completely. He stood up. He picked up his jacket from the back of his chair. He looked at me one more time. I looked back at him without looking away. He left. The front door closed behind him. And my mother and I sat in her living room in the particular silence of a house from which something that had been taking up a great deal of space has just departed. Then my mother got up. She went to the kitchen. She came back with 2 cups of tea. She set one in front of me. She sat down. And she said, in the voice she used when she was telling me something she had been waiting to tell me, I need to show you everything in that folder. Not tonight, but soon. Because you are going to need to understand exactly what you have. I looked at my mother. How long? I asked. How long have you known? She thought about it. 3 years of documentation, she said. 9 years of watching. She met my eyes. From the beginning, Linda. I knew from the beginning. I thought about 9 years of Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings and birthday celebrations where my mother had sat across from Gerald with the particular quality of attention that I now understood was not simply presence. It was preparation. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She looked at me steadily. Because, she said, you needed to be ready. Not me. You. I sat with that. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. And we sat in her kitchen with our tea and the particular quiet of a Thursday night in Savannah and everything that had just changed and everything that was going to change. And I let my mother hold my hand the way she had held it when I was small and the world was large, and she was the fixed point around which everything organized itself. She was still the fixed point. She had always been the fixed point. I had simply forgotten to look at where she was standing. I filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Not because my mother told me to. She never told me to. She asked me what I wanted and then helped me understand what I had available to me to get it. But because the night of the birthday dinner had done something that 9 years of living inside a situation had not been able to do. It had shown me what the situation looked like from outside. And from outside, it was clear. Catherine Moore handled the divorce. She was the same attorney my mother had prepared to contact about Meridian, a woman of 60 with the particular precision of someone who has spent decades helping people extract themselves from situations designed to be inextricable. She reviewed the folder my mother had assembled with the focused appreciation of a professional encountering unusually thorough preparation. Dorothy, she told my mother at their first meeting, did you miss a career? My mother smiled and said she had simply paid attention. The divorce proceedings were not simple. Gerald was not a man who accepted defeat gracefully, and he had resources and instincts for self-preservation that did not disappear because my mother had a folder and a compliance attorney's phone number. He contested, he delayed, he deployed the particular tactics that men in his position deploy when they understand that losing this particular battle has consequences that extend beyond the marriage itself. But the folder was real, and the appointment my mother had scheduled with Marcus Webb on Monday morning, which she kept after calling me on Sunday evening to tell me she was keeping it, produced a conversation that Marcus Webb took seriously enough to make some calls of his own. Gerald was placed on administrative leave from Meridian in February. A formal compliance review of his territory was opened in March. He resigned in April before the review concluded, in the particular manner of someone who has been advised by their own attorney that resignation is preferable to the alternative. I'm not going to say that my mother destroyed Gerald Watkins. I am going to say that my mother held a mirror up to what Gerald Watkins had already done to himself, and Gerald Watkins, confronted with the reflection, was unable to survive it. That is a different thing, and it is, I believe, the more accurate one. The divorce was finalized in September. I was at my mother's kitchen table when the call came from Catherine's office. My mother was making lunch, moving around her kitchen with the particular unhurried efficiency of a woman entirely comfortable in her own space, doing what needed to be done, because what needed to be done was what she always did, regardless of what else was happening. I hung up the phone. "It's done," I said. My mother set down the spoon she was holding. She looked at me. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "Like something very heavy just put itself down," I said. She nodded. "That's the right answer," she said. She went back to making lunch. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I did something I had not done in 11 years. I went to a conference alone. Not the kind of conference where you go to be seen or to network or to perform the professional version of yourself for an audience. The kind you go to because you are genuinely interested in what is being discussed, and you want to be in a room full of people who are also genuinely interested, and you don't need to check with anyone before you register or explain yourself when you get there or account for your time while you're away. I drove myself to Atlanta on a Thursday morning. I checked into my hotel. I unpacked my single suitcase. I stood in the middle of a hotel room that was entirely mine for 3 days, and I felt something I had not felt in 11 years. Uncomplicated. I called my mother that evening from the hotel room. "How is it?" she asked. "Good," I said. "Really good." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You sound like yourself." I thought about that. "I think I am," I said. "Good," she said. And she meant it with the fullness of a woman who has spent 9 years watching her daughter be something other than herself, and who is now, finally, hearing something she has been waiting to hear. I started writing again. I had been a writer before Gerald, not professionally, not with any ambition beyond the private pleasure of it, but consistently, in the way that some people are consistent about something that is simply part of how they process the world. Journals mostly. Essays sometimes. The particular kind of writing that exists for no audience, and that is therefore the most honest kind. Gerald had not told me to stop. He had simply created an atmosphere in which the writing felt unnecessary, exposed, like something that took up space that could be better used for other things. I stopped without noticing I had stopped. I started again without marking the beginning. One Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the conference, I sat down at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a notebook, and I wrote for 2 hours without stopping, and at the end of it, I had something that felt, for the first time in a long time, like the truth about something. I sent it to my mother. She called me an hour after I sent it. "Linda," she said. "Yes?" I said. "This is good," she said. She said it the way she said things that were true, without decoration, without the softening that some people apply to honest assessments to make them more comfortable. Just, "This is good." I cried a little at that, not from sadness, from something else, The particular relief of being seen by someone who sees accurately and who tells you what they see without managing what you might feel about it. My mother had always seen me accurately. I had spent 9 years trying to convince her that what she was seeing wasn't there. She had waited, quietly and without pressure, for me to see it too. The birthday dinner the following year was smaller. 8 people instead of 11. The same table, the same garden, the same flowers and food that my mother prepared with the same care she brought to everything she considered worth caring about. I sat to her left again. The seat to my left was empty. Nobody mentioned it. After dinner, when the guests had gone and my mother and I were doing the dishes the way we always did, her washing, me drying, in the easy, companionable rhythm of 2 people who have been doing this particular task together for 40 years, my mother said something she had not said before. "I'm proud of you," she said. I kept drying. "For what specifically?" I asked. "For not disappearing," she said. I thought about that. "There were many moments," I said, "when I almost did." "I know," she said. I watched them. She handed me a bowl. "But you didn't," she said. "No," I said. "I didn't." She handed me another bowl. "That matters," she said. "More than you know." I set the bowl in the cabinet where it had always lived. And we finished the dishes in the particular silence of 2 people who have said the important things and are now simply present with each other in the ordinary way of people who love each other and trust that the love is sufficient and does not require constant performance to remain real. There is something I want to tell you about the women who watch. Not the women who intervene dramatically, who make scenes, who announce their presence and their power in ways that everyone in the room immediately understands. Those women exist, and they are necessary, and I have tremendous respect for what they do. But I want to talk about the other kind. The kind who sit at the head of their own table at their own birthday dinner and pick up a wine glass and take a sip and smile. Because they have been paying attention for 3 years and they know exactly what is in a folder in their filing cabinet. And they have been waiting, with the patience of someone who understands that the right moment is not the first moment, for the person who has been doing harm to finally do it where everyone can see. My mother is that kind of woman. She did not save me that night in the dramatic sense of the word. She did not rush to my side or take Gerald by the collar or call the police while everyone watched. She sat at the head of her table and told a man who had just hit her daughter to sit down, and he sat down, because there was something in her calm that was more powerful than anything he had ever used to make himself large in a room. She saved me the way she had always done everything, quietly, precisely, with documentation and patience and the absolute certainty of a woman who had never for one moment believed that her daughter was not worth protecting. I did not know she was protecting me. That is the thing I want you to understand. For 9 years, I thought I was protecting her. From the truth, from the worry, from the particular pain of knowing what was happening in her daughter's house. But she already knew. She had always known. And she had simply waited, not passively, not helplessly, but strategically, with everything she needed already assembled, for the moment when she could do something about it that would actually last. I want to tell you, wherever you are watching from, that if you are living inside something that you are keeping private to protect someone who loves you, they probably already know. Not the specifics, maybe, but the shape of it, the weight of it, the particular way it has changed you. The people who love us accurately are always watching more carefully than we realize, and some of them are sitting at a table somewhere with a folder in a filing cabinet and a phone number for an attorney, and a patience that looks from the outside like stillness. But that is actually the most active thing in the room. Trust the people who watch carefully. And if you are the person who watches, the mother, the sister, the friend, the person at the head of the table, know that what you are doing matters, even when no one knows you're doing it. Even when the person you are watching cannot yet see what you see. Your watching is not nothing. It is, in fact, everything. I want to ask you one last thing before we finish. Is there someone in your life who has been watching for you, quietly, without announcement, with the particular patience of someone who loves you accurately and has been waiting for the right moment to help. And do they know that you know? Tell them. Tell me in the comments too. I read every single one. And if this story found something in you, if it reached the part of you that has been watched over by someone you didn't realize was watching, please like this video and subscribe to Still Waters. New stories arrive here regularly. Stories about the people who sit quietly at tables and know more than anyone realizes. Those are the stories I am here to tell. And before you go, where are you watching from right now? What time is it there? Still waters run deep. Thank you for sitting with me in them.